right, DATAROCK is here. Frederick, how's it going, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. So I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm a fan. My friends are fans. We used to
Yes.
you guys were a regular occurrence on our party mixes back in the mid what is that, like 2008, 2007-ish, that kind of
Yeah.
that time. But
Yeah.
you got some new music. But we're gonna get to hear your whole story of how you guys started, and we'll bring it all the way back to what you just released, which I'm stoked to talk about. But you're Norwegian, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep. But
is that where you're at right now? Norway?
yeah, I'm in a city called Bergen, Norway. It's on the southwest coast of Norway, and I mean, I'm not surprised that you say 2007, but that album was released here in 2005, and
Okay,
then
okay.
I bet we're coming back to this, but back in the days, it took 2 years for an album to be recorded, released locally, and then travel the world in the independent world of
Yeah,
music,
yeah.
which was physical, by the way.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so yeah, 2005 we recorded our debut album in this town in a local
Mhm.
studio, and then 2007 it was re-released in the US and Canada via Network Records, and in 2008, which is when it really hit the US, it ended up in FIFA, Need for Speed, Madden NFL, and well, I think it was something like 10 or 15 major video games, including Sims and stuff like that, TV
Yeah.
shows, like so many. I mean, it was insane. Anyway, so yeah, I'm in the town where it all started,
Yeah.
and I gotta tell you, man, COVID hit Bergen probably just as much as it did close to you. So right
Yeah.
now, the pandemic is back. I thought it was gonna, gradually fade
Ugh,
out, but
I
no,
know. I
no.
know. I know. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not going away as quick as we'd all hoped. Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles right now, and
Right.
we're one of the we're one of the major cities in the U.S. So
I know.
so the the closings and that sort of thing have been, I'd say, more extreme in the cities. You know what I mean? So
Oh,
but
totally.
it is starting to open up a little bit. But yeah, I'm it's the numbers keep fluctuating, so it's hard to tell if we're going in the right direction or not.
Yeah, and it's like it's interesting because I mean, we all got to keep hope up, but what everybody's saying is that, I mean, especially in Los Angeles, where music it is, and getting together like that is so important. I mean, imagine if it really is shut down like this throughout next year. That's just devastating to the industry, right?
I
It's really,
know.
I
Yeah.
mean, or imagine something like, I don't know, South by Southwest, something like that not happening. Imagine how
Yeah.
many talent won't be picked up. Everything is delayed a year. So many people are in that crucial part of their life, which we're going to come back to when they're in your teens or whatever.
Yeah.
When you find your talent, someone is supposed to discover you and help you cultivate that talent. There'll be a generation who's going to be lost in this goddamn COVID ordeal.
Yeah, it's
You
crazy
know?
thinking about that, because I feel like, like you said, when you're in your teens, I feel like time moves way slower. You know what I mean? I feel like the older you get, the faster time moves. So
Oh
as
yeah,
as as
yeah.
long as this year has felt, I can't imagine what it feels like to a high schooler or something like that. You know what I
Oh
mean?
no, yeah,
Uh,
that's right. That's right.
so yeah, I mean, I hope we can all get back to it safely soon.
Yeah,
So you're in Norway.
yeah.
Or do you get into music in high school and in middle school? When did you start feeling like this might be something you want to do?
Uh, I'm gonna be honest with you. I shouldn't do this, but I will,
Okay,
because I'm in the honest mood.
sure.
No, I don't remember the English term for it, but when you can hear a note and you know what note it is. What is it
uh,
called?
yeah,
It's called absolute tonality.
it's
I don't
called
remember.
I'm blanking. It's perfect pitch.
Perfect pitch. I think
Yeah,
it's called perfect
yeah.
pitch. And
Mhm.
anyways, so my mother had that.
Oh, okay.
When she was young, she was playing the trumpet. So she played the trumpet in an orchestra, and she still had her trumpet. And I mean, she expected me to pick that trumpet up, but I couldn't, because my front teeth are so big. And when I blew the trumpet, my whole cranium was, I don't know, it didn't work with me.
Yeah.
And then anyways, and then my big brother started playing the cello.
Uh huh.
and obviously I started playing the cello because he was playing the cello. So, and I really did not enjoy that. It wasn't for me.
Sure.
But then luckily, my big brother started playing the electric guitar, and this was when we were, let me think, like around 88 or I don't know, less, probably less, and then, but around 88 when I was 12, right, and that was the time when thrash metal became easily accessible. So everybody knew who Metallica was, Anthrax, Creator.
Yeah.
And these kind of bands were doing very simple riffs, like something from a Dio riff or Sabbath riff or whatever, where you can, with your little tiny hand, you can do those guitar riffs, right? And then so that's the first thing I played, was basically thrash metal when I was around 12.
Okay.
And
that's
then,
awesome.
Yeah, and the scene that I was part of when I was very young, my big brother played in a band called Vedan and a band called Paraplegic. I played in a band called, in Norwegian, Axe. We even had a song called Motor Axe.
Nice. Very Norwegian. Norwegian death metal and axes go together like,
I know.
cereal.
Yeah, no, I know. But what's really important to remember is, as you know, with early Metallica and stuff like that, there was a lot of humor in that world.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of humor, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, Anthrax and everybody, there was a lot of humor, but somehow parts of the scene that we were part of became very, very serious, and that became black metal. And you've probably seen the film about Mayhem. That's a band from the other side of the country, but you probably know about the church burnings and the killing in that scene.
I haven't seen that doc, but I've heard about it. Yeah, I've heard it kind of peripherally.
Yeah, well, that was our peers. That was people in our age group, in other bands, and it wasn't like that for us. It was not serious. We just had a good laugh, kind of like it was a punk scene. It wasn't very serious, but then it became serious. And I gotta say, parts of the scene that we were part of when we were in our very early teens, they're still, very internationally active, and constantly releasing albums that are getting insane in international reviews and credits, very international careers. Like, for instance, there is a band called Enslaved. You should check them out. Just released a new album.
All right.
Exactly our age.
Okay.
But what happened to me was that I discovered the new music coming out of England, which was do you know Stone Roses, Charlatans, Happy Mondays, all of
definitely.
those?
Yeah. Had the pleasure of interviewing one of the guys from Happy Monday a few months ago.
Really? Which one? Was it Songwriter? Cav, he's a nice guy. He's a
very
nice guy.
nice.
He's actually Cav has actually been on stage with us 5 times.
Oh, nice. All right.
And
Small
he did
world.
the last tour we did in the US. He was the support band with his band Cav all across the US.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if
he's living. He lives in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. That's where we interviewed him. It was, it was before COVID, but he's playing with Andy Rourke now from the Smiths.
Yeah, man.
On their new project.
Yeah, I know. That's great. And he's a stellar bass player. And I mean, Cav is an amazing guitar player.
Yeah.
And that's how we befriended Cav, actually, because we were like super huge, still is huge fans of Happy Mondays. And anyways, when I was a kid, discovering something like Happy Mondays was really this isn't as imaginative as you can imagine today, but it was. What they did was they combined brand new contemporary electronic music production with classic, northern soul, northern or British guitar pop rock, right? So you have far too many chords. You have an actual linear chord progression, actual linear lyric structure or whatever, right? You basically have guitar rock with electronic beats.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me that was like, oh wow, and it was mine. It was my music, kind of. So I had a radio show back then. It was, by the way, it was named after a US. Have you ever heard about the hip hop duo called Digital Underground?
Yeah. Tupac was part of that for a while.
I had a radio show named after their single called "Do What You Like." And every time I had a radio show, I played something that someone told me about. And when you're in that age, like 12, 13, 14, everything you discover is from a big brother or someone older than you, kind of,
Yeah, totally.
or someone else. But this was mine. It was mine. Nobody else was listening to Mancunian music or music for Liverpool back in the days.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we're talking today, because I kind of discovered that, and stopped doing thrash metal, ended up taking music very seriously. So I ended up 3 years in a music high school, and like one of the guys in DATAROCK, the saxophone player, who also, by the way, has been touring with Pat Metheny and Chick Corea. We became friends in music high school. He went on to study at the music conservatory, and actually 3 different diplomas. He's doing a PhD right now in, believe it or not, PhD as a saxophone player or an artist.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but yeah. So I ended up attending this. I can actually almost see my school from where I'm sitting right now. A music high school in Bergen that was very serious. So a lot of artists who ended up with international careers out of Bergen went to that music school. But to me, it became too much, because in addition to the regular school subjects, I had 11 music subjects, right? So we had like, I don't know, we had like, I don't know, 20 different subjects. And then we took music very seriously in school, took music very seriously outside of school. And I got sick of it, man. So I stopped doing music after that. Yeah, but because I mean, this, for 3 years we were doing nothing but practice all day. Like, you know, really, that was a 3-year long nerd off. Rehearsing, practicing. But so I mean, it sticks in your fingers forever, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then I started studying at the university, and that's when magic happened, because in high school we stopped taking music very seriously. And to be honest, most of the people you knew and I knew when we were kids were very, very talented on their instruments, didn't necessarily get a career. You know what I mean?
I'm sure.
Like a lot of the most talented guys when we were young, they became like super good musicians, but they ended up playing in, like, you know, weddings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And anyway, so
that's so true. It's so true, because it's easy for them. So it's you know, like I've told this story in a different interview, but I knew a guy in college, and he was an amazing pianist, and he could take a piece of sheet music, classical sheet music, slap it on the piano and just play. He's never seen it before. And
oh man,
so
I cannot do that to this day.
I can't do that either. I could never do that. But and so I'm amazed by him, and I'm like, hey, you know, have you ever written your own stuff? And he said I can't do that. I don't know how to do that.
No,
it's totally different skill sets, you know.
Yeah. No, you're right, and it's kind of heartbreaking, because I mean, some of those guys are just. I'll tell you a story. Like, when I was in music high school, there was a guy in the class above me who could do, you know, Van Halen, rest his soul.
Wow.
His amazing signature sound, he could emulate that to the minute details of, you know, really sounding like Van Halen, which is, to me, you know, impossible. I could never do
crazy.
that.
Yeah,
I know, and it really sounded like him when he was playing. Like, and that takes a lot of skill, right? But then the guy discovered Pat Metheny, and then within a couple of months, he could emulate the sound of Pat Metheny to the same degree, right? Like, and I'm bewildered. How the hell can you? but at the same time, I mean, if you start, I don't know, I don't want to say anything negative, because it's not negative. I mean, we take music to so many different places, and they're all equally cool, I guess. But if you start making money out of music when you're like 16, 17, 18 years old, you know, perhaps what you're making money on is, you know, just being paid to do covers and stuff, right? Then there's no need for you to develop a strong signature in your songwriting. I don't know.
Yeah.
But because we had that amazing guitar player in school, our guitar teacher was the same person, obviously. He saw that I wasn't the kind of person who would ever learn how to play a Van Halen solo, right? So he started asking me to show him what kind of riffs and songs I made since last time. So once a week I had a class, and most of the time, and he's a very famous theoretical writer, and I don't know the English word, but pedagogics. Do you say pedagogics? Music teaching, like
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so he's a very respected music scholar,
Sure.
and
Academic.
and the guy, yeah, and he, for whatever reason, he said, we don't care too much about the stuff that you got to learn. You just got to learn them. You'll never have any use for them, so just learn it so your fingers can do some things. Who gives a fuck? Because you're never going to use that anyway. So he pushed me through the curriculum, kind of, but he spent at least half of every hour giving like very serious constructive feedback to the songwriting I was doing. I was a baby at the time. I was 16, right? 16 or 17 and 18 years old. And every week there was a grown-up, serious person taking my songwriting very seriously. And so a lot of the songs DATAROCK has released is actually songs that I made in high school to show my guitar teacher.
Yeah, that's awesome. And good for him for kind of, you know, cultivating the interest you did have in music.
Yeah, absolutely. But then anyway, so at the university we stopped doing music, and then I met this weirdo who is now my partner in DATAROCK, who was, well, he had some background in punk music and hardcore music, and he was just a weirdo, and we clicked because we really liked the same kind of weird music. Like, for instance, a super weird band called Flying Saucer Attack. Nobody knew Flying Saucer Attack, and he was like, okay, what, do you know them? I love them, you love them. And then just for fun, we were like, okay, because he wasn't the kind of guy who went to a music high school and was practicing all the time. He was more like a whatever, he played the bass, but he's very good. But he heard that I was kind of a little bit of a guitar player, and I said, well, I'll join the band, but I don't want to sing. I don't want to write any music. I don't want to play the guitar. I don't want to play the bass or keyboards. I just want to play the drums, because I'm over with music. I spent my entire life since I was 12 practicing for no reason. Now I'm here at university studying something boring. So if I'm going to be in a band, it's just going to be for fun. I said, I just want to play the drums. But then the guy who was supposed to sing, who, by the way, was a guy from Boston who was in the band who became Bloodhound Gang when he was young.
Wow.
So anyways, he was supposed to be the singer in the band, and he lived in Bergen because he was married to a girl from Bergen. But they broke up, so he went back to Boston, and boom, I become the songwriter and singer. That's the whole story. And 20 years later, we're talking.
Yeah. So you wrote, I mean, that's awesome that a lot of the songs you wrote were written in high school, because, you know, maybe that's gives them some youthful energy and youthful angst. And
that's right. Yeah.
And, you know, you confirmed my suspicion, at least a little bit, that, you know, prior to making this type of music, you were playing in rock bands. You know what I mean? Because you know, I would have thought maybe more punk, but metal, you know, that makes sense too. Same kind of chords and all that, because you can totally hear that in the music. You know what I mean? It's you know, it sounds like you know, it sounds like electric dance punk kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you wrote some stuff in high school, then you kind of lose interest because it all of a sudden becomes work, right? You're doing it too much in college a little bit. It sounds like, you know, it's you had too many classes, so you got over it a little bit.
Yeah, but one more thing, and it's like when you're a little child, so I was just a little child with, you know, very unrealistic approach to the world. So I think one of the reasons why I stopped doing music was because I actually thought that some of the songs I already wrote was the best that I was ever gonna make. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Didn't you feel like that when you were a kid? It's like,
I remember recording things on my guitar in my bedroom when I was in high school, thinking that I need to record this and use this someday. And, you know, I've never listened to them before ever again. But yeah, it's, you know,
you should. It might be some magic there.
Sure. I would if I could find them, you know.
And if you had a cassette player.
Exactly. Cassette player. Yeah. It was some old recorder my dad used to have. So, but yeah, I mean, but that's good to feel that what you're doing has value. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things seem a lot more permanent than they really are in high school, right?
Yeah, but another thing is, like, okay, you're living in California now. Are you from California? Or from Los Angeles?
Yeah. I grew up in San Diego.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you were really, in the epicenter of music when you grew up, right? But I lived in a rural town in Norway. I mean, okay, let me explain a little. This is a town, the entire region kind of around the town is 350,000 people.
Wow.
And the city core is 35,000 people. Yet today you have like tons of metal bands with international careers, but you have Kygo, you have Alan Walker. I think Alan Walker has 2.5 billion views on one of his videos now. You had Rakes Up, you had King's Convenience, you had Aurora, who had the voice of the Northern Wind in Frozen recently. You have Sigrid. You have, I'd say between 15 and 20 pretty serious international careers right now. And, tons of Grammy nominations or wins. And it's just absurd. But when I was growing up, the world wasn't like that, right? In the 90s, the world wasn't global like it is today. So if you grow up in a town like this, there's no way you're ever gonna, have any reason to ever, even go to Los Angeles. Now I've sold out more shows in Los Angeles than I ever have in Norway.
Wow.
But I could never imagine that when I was a kid, right? So So when in the 90s, there was no reason for you to expect to ever have an international career, because nobody had an international career. It was Aha. The song "Take on Me."
Of course.
Aha.
Yeah.
That's it. That was it. But yeah. So but in the late 90s, something crazy happened, and that was, I don't know if you know these guys, but there's a duo called Kings of Convenience.
Sounds familiar.
They became pretty big and they had a phrase which was "silence is the new loud." They came at the same time as Bell and Sebastian, and it was after a pretty noisy 90s. They came sounding kind of a little bit like Simon and Garfunkel.
Okay.
And we were just and these were friends of me from growing up, and I was bewildered. Like, they're on the front page of French magazines, in British magazines. They're like getting crazy reviews and everything, from Rolling Stone magazine to NME. And like, what? These are my friends from town. And like, what's going on? And then on the other hand, you had someone called Rakes Up, who was an electronic duo.
Yeah,
and
I remember.
And again, like, but these are just people my age from town, and they're getting this international career, like, so inspired. Inspired. So that's when we decided DATAROCK was just something we started for fun. To be honest, as a joke, something we did in like tiny little clubs here in town for our friends. And then we started getting international attention, and we just thought, this is insane. Let's roll with it. So we reinvested everything we made in the band for 8 years. That's the trick.
Yeah. So you're playing these shows, you're doing DATAROCK for fun, and you're playing these shows, and then you say you started getting international recognition. What do you think it was that kind of helped you get recognized outside of Norway? Was it just putting out your music and people hearing it? Was it blogs? Was it a combination of some of those things?
Well, as I said, because Bergen is such a tiny little town, it's a very collaborative nature. So every time one of the artists locally would get some whatever international press, it was natural for them to name drop their friends from Bergen, right? So we got a lot of help. I gotta say, we got a lot of help from the other acts. When they did press, they would be kind enough to mention us, and this also made a lot of international press gravitate to Bergen, because they found it so interesting that you had bands so different, like the black metal scene and the electronic scene, and this Simon and Garfunkel-esque band in the middle. What is this town? So we started getting a lot of the city started getting a lot of international press, because it was so bewildering and interesting, right? And perhaps especially for the kind of music journalism that loves the underdog. So for instance, we very early on we got a lot of help from Pitchfork, when Pitchfork was still a mini blog in Chicago. So no, it was definitely the blogosphere helped a lot, and it was a new thing back then, right?
Yeah, because that was such a thing, during that time. I feel that's when blogs really started being kind of where you got new music.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And then, but then the blogs didn't function just the way they are now. It was more like long form articles. It was,
Yeah.
really in-depth analytical reviews of albums and singles and whatnot. And an elaborate language, a huge knowledge of music, and I mean, when we grew up, that was like I don't know, our internet was music magazines, right?
Yeah.
Like you would, that was our Pandora and YouTube and Spotify and everything combined in one thing. It was a music magazine. So
Yeah.
being able to, in an elegant, elaborate way, analyze a piece of music, that was an art form. So the blogs was really, I think, just like we wanted to make records like we grew up with, journalists around the world wanted to write articles like they grew up with. Kind
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. You're right.
So yeah, so sometimes I come across those articles from back then, like even pre-album, like before 2005, and it's it's so emotional. It's so amazing how it's a ridiculous word, but the music world became democratic, kind of. You didn't have to have a huge label or huge system around you to get international press suddenly. You
Sure.
did, you
Yeah.
did, you did. You needed that system to get NME, Rolling Stone magazine, Spin, or those huge publications. But suddenly, out of the blue, you have all these blogs, right? And at the same time, you had MySpace.
Yeah. Ah.
You know,
Yeah.
so, and that's really, I mean, so many things came together. It was really ridiculous how many things came together. But for instance, Coca-Cola, for whatever reason, we never figured this out, how this happened. But
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Coca-Cola,
Tell Coca-Cola used fa 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 in one of their commercials, right?
yeah, we never understood how come, to be honest. But coincidentally, when they called us, we were in Amsterdam playing a show at the famous place Paradiso. And I know for a fact that the company in charge of this particular synchronization was a company called Wieden and Kennedy, and they're Dutch, I believe. So I don't know. It might have been that random. We were playing in Netherlands. I don't know. And anyways, like came out of the blue. We didn't understand anything. Like what? Why? Why do they want
Did you
us
get
in
a
their?
Did you get a call? Did you get an email? Asking you to use the song, or how were you
No,
contacted?
yeah, we were contacted via our manager
Okay.
on email. So I wonder how they got our email. I don't know. Yeah, well, I mean, we had a homepage. I don't know,
Yeah.
man.
You had a
It was
MySpace. Could have been
yeah,
on
we had a
MySpace.
yeah, we had a MySpace. But I'll tell you something funny. This is really funny. This is interesting, especially for you being well, San Diego, Los Angeles. It's a little family, isn't it? It's almost
Yeah, it's
grown
Southern
together.
California. Yeah, it's Southern
Yeah.
California.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and well, anyway, San Diego. I mean, let me think. Isn't DIMAC both Los Angeles and San Diego? I think it is.
I'm not sure if they have any venues in San Diego. I've been in LA for a while now. But yeah,
Yeah.
they definitely, big part of Los Angeles.
No, no. Yeah, yeah,
And they
yeah.
had a
But because
club. I don't know if I haven't been to the club in a long time, so I don't know if they still have one. But they actually had a music venue that they opened up some years ago. Also,
yeah, the
so
CineSpace or whatever it was called,
yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah, it
Or
was called
something like that.
CineSpace, and then they
Yeah.
changed it to just
Oh
DimMax
yeah. Oh yeah.
Studio
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that. Uh huh.
Okay. But I'll tell you something funny, because there there was a time when Steve Aoki didn't throw cakes in people's faces, and he
Uh
was
huh.
the and he was a hardcore kid, and DIMAC was a hardcore label.
Uh huh.
And
Yeah.
by hardcore, I don't mean a hardcore label, but hardcore music.
Right.
So, and he was the singer of a screamo band called This Machine Kills,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I don't remember when this was, 90s, early 2000s. I don't remember, but his band did a split 7-inch with a Norwegian band called J.R. Ewing, and who were friends of mine. They stayed at my place when they recorded the amazing EP called Laughing with Daggers. But anyway, so because Steve Aoki knew about this hardcore band, he licensed an album that they did in, I don't know when, 2004 or 5, I don't know, called Malmstrom. And Malmstrom was released on DIMAC, but it was released on the same label as us. back here in this town that I'm sitting
Mm.
in right now. And also he found the band Block Party interesting, because he saw how hardcore and electronic music was merging in Europe. With, you know, I don't know if you know these bands, but Block Party and Klaxons and
Oh, of course.
Bicycles, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Love them.
all of those guys come from the hardcore music scene in England, right?
Hmm.
So that whole entire world was really, it was really like in Europe it was I think it was hardcore mixing with electronic music. Perhaps in California it was a little bit more hardcore mixing with producers of hip hop. I don't know really, but like the whole EDM scene hadn't happened in Los Angeles yet. Anyways, the way I remember. So anyway,
Yeah.
so Steve Aoki, he was very interested in Block Party and in that whole world. I think he licensed Block Party, and and another girl in Bergen called Annie, who was featured on some of our releases, and we were featured on some of her releases. Anyway, so Steve Aoki, and we didn't know who this person was at the time, just so
Uh-huh.
you know. Later on, he wanted to sign us. We befriended him, like we DJ'd with him. So I know Cinespace very well from like 2000, I don't know when,
Yeah, it was
2004 or
huge. It
something.
was huge around that time. It was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it was one of the epicenters for you know, that kind of music. And
It was, and it was, and we spent a lot of time in Los Angeles with him and that whole scene those years, and it was really interesting to see how quickly that scene grew from. I mean, Cinespace was a tiny little bar in the
yeah,
beginning,
yeah.
and then it grew to this huge thing. I mean, it was also thanks to Frankie Chan and iHeart Comics and all of that, I guess. But and I know they're enemies or competitors now, but back then they were like the magical duo. Anyways, back to the point. One day we were having lunch with Steve Aoki at the Winter Music Conference in Miami,
Yeah.
and I said, "Ah, you got to meet my friends. They own and created MySpace."
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
like, "Really? Are you serious?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they're like super nice guys.
Yeah.
And I just asked them, like, I have to ask you, how come DATAROCK, a tiny little baby band from Bergen, how come we ended up being the featured artist on the front page of MySpace with back then 28 million viewers at the time? Would, you know, every day 28 million people would open MySpace,
Yeah.
and this was before Facebook existed. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that was the dominant social media.
Yeah.
And it's just asked, so I asked them, like, why the hell did you guys choose to put us on front page? Because we don't know you, we didn't know anyone, we didn't have any system whatsoever. And they just started laughing and
Is this
giggling.
Tom?
And the
Is
point,
Tom? Are you talking about MySpace
no,
Tom? He was one of them, or a couple other
Tom
guys?
was actually, no, Tom was actually not there.
Okay, so a couple of the
Tom
other
wasn't there.
founders. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I think they were he and two or three others were the original founders, and it was the rest of them kind of.
Right. Right. Okay.
Anyways, and then they started laughing and they said, he made us do it.
Steve Aoki
So
did.
yeah, and Steve
Wow.
didn't know us at the time. He had some interest in our music, but we never met, we never communicated at all.
Yeah.
He was just kind enough to make his friends feature DATAROCK from Bergen just because he liked us.
Yeah.
And like that, everything happened. So,
Wow.
you know, for 2 weeks 28 million people saw DATAROCK when they opened MySpace.
Sheesh. So that's 28 million times 14 days or whatever. Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing. So that's
it's
definitely
crazy.
that was probably a game changer for you right
Oh
there.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
right after that 2 weeks, did you just see the
Oh yeah.
that you saw the
Yeah.
numbers just explode after that as far as your MySpace streams? I mean, MySpace
It was
streams were
insane.
one of the only metrics you had back then, I guess.
Oh
But
yeah.
then you're
Yeah.
probably getting calls from labels and venues and booking show, you know, your shows probably got elevated at that point. And
Oh
so
shit, I'll tell you. I'll tell you this. It's so funny. You won't believe it. Okay, imagine you're sitting in Bergen. You have this band. You don't have a sound engineer. You never had a light engineer. You don't have crew. You don't have backline technician. You don't even have backline. We were traveling with a guitar, a bass, a acoustic keyboard, and backing tracks on mini disc. That's
oh
it.
wow. Okay.
So we were traveling with hand luggage, right? And then someone after this MySpace incident, someone else says, "Do you want to do a tour in Australia?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Didn't think much more about it. It was absurd enough just going to Australia.
Yeah.
And then we went to Australia, and we weren't really famous anywhere. We had a tiny little audience in many countries, but we weren't in any way famous whatsoever. But then we came to Australia, and we were completely household in Australia. We didn't understand anything, and we knew we were joining a touring festival, like, I don't know, Bunaroo or something like that. We have a big stage, tiny stage, and a corner tent that nobody cares about. We thought we were gonna play there.
Yeah.
But no, we were playing the main stage before James Brown on a touring festival.
What?
A touring stadium festival.
That's awesome. Yeah,
So
I mean, Australia is they're huge fans of that kind of music. Still to this day, I feel like.
Still to this day,
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's really what happened, and I'm happy to say that Australia is, it's only 25 million people, but it seems as if every single person cares about music. So even though it's not a huge country, it's like 10 huge touring festivals, and music is super important there. So we actually did 8 national tours in very few years, like that.
Wow.
And that actually generated enough of a profit for us to, drop everything else and work full time on DATAROCK for many years, and then reinvest funds in, re-recordings, music videos, remixes, professional, all sorts of necessary and unnecessary things. So Australia was really what happened. And that was, again, back in the days, the world was so simple. It was one person working in the distribution company. The distribution company was run by a married couple. So that's 2 people. And it was a third person working in this distribution company. That's it. 3 people, that's it. And that one person sent 1 CD to the national radio channel called Triple J. And that's why we ended up with 8 national tours. That's it. We didn't have a PR
that radio
agency.
play really helped.
Yeah, because that year they played it so much that you probably heard about this before, but on Australia Day they had something called Australia's Hottest 100, and it's a huge deal. It's like National Day. What do everybody do? They barbecue, drink beer, and listen to Hottest 100 on the radio. And that year they had 660,000 people calling in their vote for the coolest song of the year. And we came in at number 12 out of 660,000 votes.
Wow.
What? Like, that's a good turn up. 660,000 votes in a country.
What song was that? Was that Fa Fa Fa?
It was Computer Camp Love.
Oh, okay. Nice. Very cool.
That's really, really surprising, isn't it? But yeah, that was it. And then later on, Fa 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 became famous. But yeah, so it's an absurd story with very few people involved, kind of.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It really shows, just how pivotal just 1 or 2 moments can be. You know what I mean? I talk to a lot of artists nowadays, and it's most of the time you get it was a lot of baby steps, but you had some real, definitive game changers, you know what I mean? The MySpace, the radio play in Australia, the just Australia in general. And just, I guess, Stevie Aoki being a fan. Do you still keep in touch with him nowadays?
I haven't. No, we haven't seen him in many, many, many years. But keep in mind, like back then, like I don't even. I mean, he was a name that it seemed as if a lot of people knew who he was. But when we knew him, he wasn't, even remotely close to the kind of famous person he is today. I mean, a lot of people knew that his father created Benihana.
Right.
I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew who his sister was, and she was the muse of Karl Lagerfeld for 6 years. And that was very exotic. So he was like the kid who had that weird family. No, he's a huge name, right?
Right.
So no, I haven't met. He's a super nice person. He's a super nice guy. But I haven't seen him in forever. No.
So I think you explained perfectly, how you went from a small band who's doing this just for fun to exploding to massive success. You get a Coca-Cola commercial, your songs in Ace Ventura Pet Detective, right? You were in NHL 08, FIFA 08, NBA Live 08, and you were in The Sims. So it's this, your song Fa 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 is being put everywhere. You know, Madden, I think. So a whole bunch of video games. Apparently someone in the video game market really liked you. And then were you used in an Apple iPod commercial also?
Yeah, and that was also, again, we were very lucky because I mean, there's constantly going on advertising campaigns, and there's so many campaigns you can be part of, and to be honest, we've been part of a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's great exposure.
No, but it is, yeah. And we're also always very careful about what we say yes to, obviously, but we've said yes to a lot, I have to admit. But what happened with the advertisement with Apple was that they were launching their iPod Nano, called Chromatic by some reason. The tiny little Nano in, I don't remember, 2009 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But fact of the matter is that ad campaign was at the time world history's most expensive advertisement campaign.
That one particular campaign, the Nano campaign.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly how they could sort of make that point, but I'm assuming at the time they were doing, because this was it wasn't particularly expensive, this product. It was an affordable version of an Apple product.
It was their tiny little, it didn't even have a screen, I don't think.
No, it did have a screen. It did have a screen. It did.
Okay.
It had a tiny little screen.
Okay.
But what it was an advertisement campaign that ran simultaneously in basically every country on the planet. Right? So the kind of exposure we got from that campaign was billboards in the major cities across the planet.
So right? Is that how you guys were featured? You were featured in the billboards where it would show it would show DATAROCK as the artist that was playing.
Yeah. Well, it was actually the billboard posters was every color you could buy this product in. So for instance, on the blue one, Kanye West. He had the blue one. The red one was Interpol. The yellow one, or whatever color it was Calvin Harris, and so on.
That's awesome.
But we had the golden, like the orange. But then there's a funny story because at the time we were relaunching the debut album with a lot of additional material, and for whatever reason, for the relaunch we changed the color. So at the time when the Apple commercial went out, the cover of our album was blue in Europe. So in Europe, we got to take Kanye West's model.
What do you mean?
So in Europe, we had the blue version of the product. So our cover was on the screen of the blue version of the. Whereas in the rest of the world, it was on the golden colored iPad.
Okay, and then
see what I mean?
Yeah. So for the re-release, you changed the color you decided to change the color of the album.
Yeah. So in Europe, we got the one that Kanye West was supposed to have.
That's awesome.
So we actually had two different colors of versions of the iPad Nano. If you Google DATAROCK and Apple and Chromatic, you still find the.
You can still find the ad.
You find the ad and or what is it called, a tutorial video, and it's really funny because they say something like beautiful artwork, or go into your library where find the beautifully displayed artwork, and they go to our artwork, nice. Which by the way is hand painted by myself.
Oh, nice.
So that's what the beautiful artwork, and they're going to our cover.
Yeah.
And then they play, and you can say something like, and play your favorite song. And then they play Fa 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 for 32 seconds.
Nice. And I feel like Apple ads still massive if you're to get a sync with Apple, but I feel like in that particular time when iPods, were all the thing, if you had an Apple commercial. Like I remember Group Love had a song on an Apple commercial, and I still remember and I still relate Group Love with that song that they had on an Apple
Yeah,
commercial. I felt like that was like a career maker if you had music with an Apple commercial.
but it was, and you gotta. Okay, so this is, again, it's hard to explain to people who weren't there, but music industry has always been, I mean, the nature of mainstream music industry is, I mean, money talks.
Sure.
That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And you've always had you know, a few huge artists, and for the rest of the world, it's been very hard to get anywhere, kind of.
Right.
But this was such an exciting time, because suddenly all of these huge brands, like for instance Apple, they saw these interesting global trends, where like a completely weird band from, you know, something like CSS from Brazil, or DATAROCK from Norway, or I don't know, Justice from Paris, or I don't know,
Yeah.
all of these weird bands from were trending online, without, you know, money being spent on marketing. It was just, I don't know, somehow these things were happening. And anyway, so all of these weird bands started ending up in these seemingly sellout scenarios, where you have your song in a TV show, a film, or an advertisement, or something like that. But the truth of the matter is that that's the only alternative, or was the only alternative to radio,
Yeah.
right? And radio because you didn't have streaming services at the time. And mind you, back then, if you wanted to hire the help of a professional radio plugger in the US back then,
Yeah.
that would be $10,000 minimum,
Yeah.
with absolutely no guarantee of success.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And you got, I mean, you're right, because the indie factor of is why the, you know, brands like Apple wanted it to be associated with you, you know, because Apple likes to be they're very much not the little guy anymore, but that's how they used to be. And they, you know, they were the underdog to the PC, you know, they were for the alternative kid, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
But so they wanted to be associated with that, and they still, I think, to this day try to, regardless of how big they are now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us are victims to their coolness to this day.
Yeah. I'm an Apple fan, so
Yeah,
I
me
get
too.
it.
Yeah, I think, okay, yeah, it's Apple all around me right now, actually. But
Well, Frederick, so
yeah, but
you took. I feel like you had some crazy things happen, but let's take it all the way to right now, because I don't want to you know, to miss out on your new release and hear about that. So so you just dropped TikTok, and have you dropped Digital Life yet as well?
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So 2 new singles, Digital Life and TikTok. So are you hoping, you know, after, you know, maybe things get a little safer, that you guys can start touring these you know, this new music again?
Yeah, absolutely. But if it's okay, it's interesting to talk a little bit about those songs,
Yeah.
because you know, when we did the first album, we had absolutely no idea that was gonna take us, you know, particularly far, because back in the days, that album was very peculiar. It was very weird.
Yeah.
We got some great reviews, but for instance, we got a great review in Pitchfork, but Pitchfork wasn't influential back then to the degree they ended up at.
Right.
It was, first it was like, oh, nice, we got a nice review from some nerds who were nerds just like us, and let's stick together, nerds. But we knew it didn't really have much of an effect, right? So we were like, we would play experimental music festivals. We would play with punk and hardcore bands, and, you know, electro clash, and, you know, arty part of the music world, like Sonar Festival in Barcelona and stuff like that. But it was mainly accepted by an, you know, very open-minded experimental music world, which was very small, right? So but then gradually, so many other bands started kind of working a little bit similar to us, with, you know, the kind of no wave disco punk, disco beats, right? And that became more and more normal, and you know, Block Party became huge over here. Franz Ferdinand became huge. Killers became huge. So many bands that sounded a little bit like us became huge. And then we were like, but we've been around forever, because we started releasing music like that in 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got a little bit, journalists were kind enough to throw us in the same terminology. Like in Europe, they called us new rave, but the other bands were like 8 years younger than us. They were just very nice to us. Like, okay, but DATAROCK's been around doing this for a little while. Let's pretend that they're the same. So anyway, so we got a lot of help from journalists, because they remembered us from when they wrote for underground publications, you know.
Right.
Anyways, and then gradually that scene became a little bit more kind of mainstream accessible. So as we just talked about, the songs ended up in even Ace Ventura Jr., right?
Yeah.
which I think was, nobody saw that coming in 2005. By the way, it also ended up in, you know, 10 great movies. Right now, the same song is in a Brad Pitt produced film called Quadrillionaire. As you know, it was just released with Rachel Woods in the main role.
Yeah, actually, I just saw an ad for that. I haven't had a chance to check out the trailer, but yeah, that's awesome.
No, yeah. I haven't gotten to see it. I've seen the trailers. It looks very cool. But anyway, so all of that stuff happened. But what happens in your brain, even though you don't want to go there, what you start doing is, I mean, as soon as your family, your bandmates, you know, management, technicians, even designers, music video makers, you know, your assistants, blah blah blah, when people start depending on you having an income, you start trying to write music that can generate an income.
Right.
That's just human nature. If you
Sure.
don't, you're probably a psychopath, you know.
Oh.
But then anyways, what happens then creatively is that you might start going in a loop, and that doesn't take you anywhere, because if you try to repeat something and what you did to start with was something semi-interesting, then nobody's going to want to hear that, because it won't be interesting perhaps the next time.
It's like counterintuitive. You know?
Yeah. So, and to be honest, I think we've done a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, a lot of the things that we have done since the first album has, you know, some of it has been semi-successful, some of it hasn't at all. But some of the things that hasn't been successful has been, I think, pretty well, good. I'm proud of a lot of stuff we did, but we haven't really had the same kind of success. So there was no reason to stay in a loop of trying to repeat yourself or trying to reinvent that formula that you did 15 years ago. So this year that was going to come to an end, because we decided, let's just celebrate the debut album. It was a 15-year anniversary. We had done so many things. We sort of went down the darkness path that the kind of music we started with was kind of dark. So we thought, why not? So 2 years ago, we released an album called Face the Brutality, for many reasons that we won't go into, because that's depressing and sad and serious. But we did a very dark, serious album, and then we did an EP called The Fool of 40 is a Fool Indeed. We even did, a few years ago, we did a musical, a limited edition, 250 copies musical with a full symphony orchestra for 100 musicians.
Awesome.
So we're insane.
Yeah,
so we're insane. But we wanted to just, okay, let's celebrate the 15-year anniversary of the debut and start fresh. Try to remember, how did we start? Because all the original members were back in the band. We're like, let's just remember what we were doing, what this started off as. So anyway, so for the first time ever, we were releasing the debut album on vinyl for Record Store Day, I think the 18th or 28th of April. And everything was set up, right? Record Store Day, first time ever on vinyl. Celebrate this thing, let it kind of come to an end and start again. Rip it up and start again. Kind of.
Yeah.
Then the goddamn COVID came, right?
Yeah.
And then we were doing tons of festivals. We were doing promotional touring. We had finally sort of gotten around to learn all the songs that we did in 2005. And
yeah.
And then everything shuts down. And I don't know if you know this, but Norway is a really strange country. It's an oil country. It has unlimited access to oil. It's a complete social democracy. It's only 5 million people living here. So it's almost like a northern like Arabic Emirate state. It's
Mm.
really I mean, the state of Norway has a lot of money laying around.
Mm.
So when everything went to hell, Norway, they set up a few like they set up a few subsidy. I don't know what to say this in English, but subsidy
Yeah.
setups where you can get a little
Subsidies
bit of.
or
Okay,
grants or
so
something like that.
yeah, so they set up a few grants, and we applied for a few grants. Just like, okay, no, everything went to shit. What are we
Yeah.
gonna do? So we got a little bit of funds because you can't make money on what we did with this money. It's just something we did for fun. Anyways, so we got some funds to do a digital campaign for the 15-year anniversary. So we ended up doing like tons of really funny animations with a short little documentary about the first album, and well, all sorts of crap. And we were stuck in the rehearsal space in the studio, and we're like, wait a minute. So now we understand what we were doing in 2005. There's no reason to pretend that if we have a radio song, we're going to get all the festivals, because the festivals were shut down. So let's not mind the commercial aspects of music. Let's go back to what we actually did in 2005, which is just be creative for the fun of it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how these songs were made. We didn't think about anything. We didn't think about the consequence. We didn't think about synchronization, radio, you know, playlists, clever moves, nothing like that. We were just thinking back to square base, like back to 2005. We're kids again. So
yeah.
that's why the songs that's why the songs are there, because there was nothing we could do. Like everything shut down, nothing we could do. Spend time in the studio like you do when you're a kid.
Yeah. So at first this was like you were like, metaphorically, we're gonna, take it back to where we don't care. But then actually, literally, you had to act like literally you didn't care, because there wasn't going to be a tour afterwards. So
there wasn't anything to care about, kind of.
So it probably injected even more authenticity into these new tracks.
Yeah. And to be honest, again, like back in 2005, we didn't really have good reason to believe that we were onto anything, because we were like, when you're really isolated, like I think we've all been since March.
Yeah.
Then you don't get to get all of that impulse. Like usually, if you play in a band, you do some demos, you record some riffs, and there's always someone who says, "Oh, I don't like that," or "I like that," or surprise you and say, "I really like that weird thing you did," or I don't know. Or you go to shows, you pick up some impulses, you go to a party, you hear a cool song on the sound system, or none of that, right? So when you isolate yourself like that, chance is that you're going to lose contact with what other people are into,
Yeah.
So anyways, I have to say I was very surprised when I decided to send it to Steve Dubb, who is the mastermind behind the sound of Chemical Brothers. So Chemical Brothers released No Geography. They got the Grammys for Best Electronic Album 2019, and the guy has mixed or co-produced like 100 of the coolest albums the last 30 years, right?
Right.
And I sent it to this guy, just thinking that he was going to politely decline. Well, yes, I don't have time, but yes.
Yeah, good stuff, but maybe
yeah,
later.
yeah. And then he comes back and says, "I love it. I want to mix it."
Awesome.
Yeah. So you're sitting. Our rehearsal space isn't like one of those fancy Instagram friendly studios. It's a basement, and it's a shithole, and it's a cozy shithole, but it's kind of like, if you ever seen a picture of Mac DeMarco's basement studio, it's kind of like that.
Okay.
A cozy little shithole. And anyway, so we're sitting in our little rehearsal space basement, recording some stuff ourselves, send it off to Steve Dubb, and this is what we get back in return. Love it. And yeah, so that's kind of the amazing kinds of positive things that can come out of a terrible period like we're in the middle of right now. I think a lot of people snapped out of some routine, snapped out of some circular way of thinking. I think a lot of people, I don't know, I hope that a lot of people kickstarted a genuine non-commercial thinking, creativity, because there was no reason to think particularly commercially for the last half year. you know?
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's a great silver lining to, to 2020. And you're right.
Yeah,
You're so, it's so well put that I think a lot of people, were taken out of their daily routine and
yeah,
were able to see the world or maybe what they wanted to do in a different way. So that's one positive thing about,
yeah.
having to stay home, or having your small business or whatever, have put it on pause or whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah, and and the fact of the matter is, and I've talked to quite a lot of people about this. The fact of the matter is that we know so many people suffer so badly, and we know so many people have a terrible time. One thing is financially, but there is a lot of people, who are, if not in the middle of a insanely serious depression, they're heading that way.
Right.
So in a period of time like this, it's very it's not just fun and games to talk about. Oh, we wrote all of these great songs. We had such a great time. You can't really talk about it
Yeah.
because it's taboo. You feel bad about it. But
Sure.
I bet a lot of creatives actually feel like that, because the world that we talked about, that's when the internet made music distribution and streaming and communicating globally so accessible for people who weren't Michael Jacksons or Oasis or I don't know, major acts. That creativity was a tiny bit strangled, I guess. And then, as you know, the world opened up. But then, with the streaming services and the nature of algorithms and all of that, it kind of choked the world a little bit too. It feels like to me, anyways. It's like the world has become, a medium that opened up the music world like crazy, also monopolized and homogenized the music world to an insane degree. It feels like, anyways. And because there is so little to be made of streaming, it seems as if more people than ever do their utmost to produce a sound that is commercially accessible to so many that you can actually get onto playlists and stuff like that. Right. Whereas, but if you listen back to music history, I mean, almost none of the music that ended up mattering was formatted to fit the world like that. That was teeny music. That was music for children.
Right.
And like, and to a certain degree, I think there is no difference between. I mean, the major playlists are for children and adults alike, but it's hard for promoters, festival bookers, and all of that to differ between playlists for adults and playlists for children, perhaps.
Right.
So I think because playlists and stuff like that has become so important, and to hit those targets, to to get into algorithms that make sure that your music spreads to another platform, blah blah blah, that whole system of algorithms. It's become a numbers game to an insane degree.
Totally. And I think also the streaming platforms now are basically like major radio now too, where it's
totally. And
basically the labels get first dibs on the playlists and all that. So it's not as democratized as it was during the time MySpace and when the blogosphere really started picking up steam and all that, where a single curator could be like, this band is cool and you should check them out, and they'll write an impassioned essay on how cool they are, so it's so you're right, what opened up seems to be retracting right now, but things come in waves, so sure, I'm sure something will open up again.
You're right, but that's so well put, and I don't necessarily think that all kids would understand what you even mean by that, because they don't listen to the radio. But there was a time when you had independent radio and commercial radio, and nobody who was particularly interested in music was listening to commercial radio. That's just how it is.
Right.
But now I think it's very, and back then, festival bookers or industry people, they knew how to differ between the two. And they knew that a number in independent radio or a number in the commercial world was, very different. Okay, say you have a success in the commercial world. That meant that there is a huge debt connected to whatever release you have. Whereas there is no debt connected to this independent artist who had some kind of success, kind of. I don't think necessarily the world differs between those two worlds anymore, because the parameters that you look at are identical. It's an Instagram account, it's a Snapchat, it's a Twitter, or it's a TikTok, or it's Facebook, or it's it's a YouTube upload. It all looks the same, and you can look at that number and that number. It's the same kind of number. How many plays, how many followers, blah blah blah. It didn't used to be like that.
Right.
Back in the days, it was like, I know a lot of people who has a tattoo of artwork from this artist, or I have a T-shirt from that artist, or you have the hairdo of the bass player of that band.
Right. Yeah.
So it was like a completely different, I don't know, signifiers and stuff like that back in the days. But adequately put, yes, I think the streaming services is very much in the nature of commercial radio, not in the nature of alternative radio.
Sure. And it's awesome nowadays. I mean, I wouldn't go, we are so blessed that we can listen to any song we want at any moment.
Totally.
So it's so great,
absolutely.
but yeah, we have to find a way to get back to at least being a little less numbers based. But I was having a conversation about this the other day. I think promoters, they look at it, and whether they like the artist or not, they go, oh well, this guy's got 1 million followers, so there's bound to be some money to be made here if I work with them, or if I book them, or so I think I can see why it makes sense from a business point of view, but it's harder to break cool bands when you're just worried about the numbers, because a lot, hopefully those bands aren't too worried about that at the beginning. But
but it's the worst thing I ever saw was a festival promoter on the front cover of a magazine, and he said, "We're in the business of selling beer."
Oh, yeah.
Now, if you even state that out loud, you're in the wrong business. Join the stock market or whatever. If that's what it's all about, it's just about making money. There is more money to be made in weapon or oil than in music. So
that's a great point. Yeah, I remember in college a music teacher saying, if you want to be rich, he was like, if you want to be rich and famous, there's a lot of way easier ways to do it than music. Which is so true. So that's a good point.
No, but if that's the mentality, obviously you're not going to book something interesting that won't pull a crowd, because they don't drink close to as many beers. If you have 100 dedicated fans, they might come back every year for 50 years.
That's true.
So it might be worth making sure they show up. And
you're right. It lends itself more to a long-term loyalty if you actually respect the fans more than just looking at Instagram followers and actually try to curate something good.
No, and it's like there's no way around it. That's just the nature of these things. I mean, I guess it's just how it is. But then again, I mean, I think some interesting things are happening, like with the Patreon, and I guess Bandcamp has become very important. Direct to consumer is what they call it in the regular selling of goods world. Direct to consumer, that's presumably what's going to save the music world, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Those Bandcamp is surprisingly it's relevant right now. I still see artists use it all the time. So it's hanging in there, which is awesome.
No, but it is. And I think, and also that might become more of close communication between the bands and the fans, right? There is no scent in the screen on Spotify. I remember when you I still buy them, but when you buy a physical, let's go back to when I was a kid. I remember when I was a kid how thrilled I was when I bought a cool album cover.
Totally.
And you look at the colors, you look at the design, look at the font, you look at who was involved, you look at the producer, the mixer, everyone, the illustrator, the graphic designer, everything is there. There's nothing if you listen to music on Spotify.
Right.
What are you gonna read? What studio was it? Nobody gives a fuck.
Yeah.
Sorry for the term.
Oh, sorry.
Say that.
No, it's all right. No, I know having something physical, and I was talking about this the other day. I think that's why I forgot who I was talking to about, but we were saying, people buy albums, records, vinyl who don't even have record players because they
Yeah,
want
yeah,
something, they want
yeah,
something physical, or they want to support the
yeah,
band, you know, because
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, I don't need to buy your album. I can listen to it on Spotify, but if I'm at the show, you know, I can take this home, I can hang it on my wall, or you can
yeah,
sign it, something physical, you know?
yeah. I, there was a time where I perhaps would have laughed at that or thought it was ridiculous, but I don't think it's ridiculous. I think it's a very generous and nice thing to do. And to be honest, I have a couple of albums that I never opened. I
Sure.
have to say, but I wanted to buy something from, and not just to be nice. I needed it. I needed to own this,
Yeah. It's a piece of
But then
art too,
again,
you know, you can look at it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And like, but let's not forget the information on the physical copy, because I think it's a damn shame if we forget who produced the Beatles, right?
Totally.
We need to know who these people are. Like, what's gonna happen to the world when nobody cares who Rick Rubin is? We
Yeah.
need to know who these people, and the only way you can figure out, unless it's a Rick Rubin or something like that, the only way you can know who a producer, a studio, or whatnot on an album is the small print on the back cover, or the booklet of the CD, right? That's where all
Yeah.
that information was. Where is it now? It's never, ever, anywhere.
Yeah.
So
And so I remember listening to music and looking at the CD book, and it was especially
yeah.
interesting to me for hip hop artists who would use a
Oh
lot of
yeah. Okay.
samples too, because
Yeah.
then you
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
see what, you know,
Yeah.
what was sampled, and you could go back and
Yeah.
listen to the original one, and it gave you the
Yeah.
appreciation of some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but if
Like, do you
digital,
remember the covers? Do you remember the covers where there was even like all the equipment was listed? What kind of drum machines, the keyboard player, keyboards, and all of that. Or you could even have an image, and then lines to the individual gadgets used on on the
that's
music.
awesome.
I
Yeah,
love
I know.
that.
I love it too. And it opens up the world. I mean, maybe in some ways, it, you know, some artists don't want to share that, you know, but to as a fan, you love seeing that stuff, you know.
Oh, totally. And it's so inspiring. And mind you, again, I don't think necessarily kids today, because every kid can produce music in their bedroom right now.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that people know that there is a difference between a producer and a recording engineer.
Yeah.
Like, they don't necessarily know that there was a time where you could be professional just placing microphones in a
Yeah.
huge studio,
Yeah.
you know. But there is a science to all of that. The funny story about how the song "Relax, Don't Do It" if
Yeah.
you want to go through it.
Hmm.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Yep.
Supposedly, that album was world's history most expensive album up until Guns N' Roses' Chinese Democracy, but that's a different story. So, but supposedly that album was so expensive because they were using, what kind of studio was it? The Sun Studios or whatever it's called, and and there was so many professionals involved in making the Frankie Goes to Hollywood album that it was the most expensive album ever made, supposedly.
Hmm.
I think it's so wonderful what Robbie Williams did when he wrote this. What was it? 80 million pounds? No, 800. What was? Do you remember?
Don't.
I think it was something like 80 million, which is basically like $80 million.
Right.
Wait, no, that can't be right. It must be more.
It's
Anyways,
a
he
little
wrote
more. Yeah. It's more.
yeah, but Robbie Williams, he wrote the biggest contract ever written with an artist, and I think he wrote it directly with, I don't know, Live Nation or something like that. I don't remember. Anyways, so Robbie Williams write this insane historical contract, goes straight to the studio, hires everyone involved in the Frankie Goes to Hollywood album
Oh, really?
because
That's awesome.
because he could afford it, and it's such
Yeah.
a great story, right?
Yeah.
So I think they found all those, weird scientists, these amazing studio technicians. The album wasn't particularly good, and it completely
Yeah. Uh-huh. It was
it didn't
the
work
water
out.
world of albums.
Yeah, but I just love that the guy has a love and passion and understanding of the recording world, and he probably, as a gesture, thank you to the music world, like hire on all these amazing magicians who partake in the making of amazing albums, right? A kid today doesn't necessarily know that a lot of the famous producers started off as a coffee making, assistant in the studio, then gradually putting up mics, then perhaps tuning some things, I don't know. And then eventually, after working as an assistant on hundreds of albums, like a sushi chef in Japan, like you don't get to touch anything, just the rice for 3 years,
Right.
like that's how music used to be. And then when you go through all of those steps, then at the end, then you produce these amazing albums that stand through time.
Right.
Music today is forgotten 2 weeks later because it's okay to forget it sometimes.
Yeah, I definitely feel, and it is a little sad sometimes, that we're incredibly lucky at the volume of music and the availability of music now.
Yeah.
But sadly, it kind of makes us take it for granted, and it feels a little bit more disposable. You know what I mean? I used to get an album, and I would listen to an album over and over, the whole album.
Man,
you put you put a CD in the car, and you leave it in there for weeks. And now it's like a new album comes out, and I'm guilty of it. I'll cherry pick a few tracks, and I'll throw it onto my playlist.
No, me too. But you remember when we were kids, a CD or a vinyl album was so expensive. So every time you bought one, you were gonna get your money worth on it.
That's true.
But I remember But do you remember when the CD players came, where you could have like shuffle mode, and then they had numbers? You could take out the songs that you didn't like too much.
I never took advantage of that. I would just manually hit the fast forward button.
Yeah. Okay. But it was like, just as you said, I think, there is a handful of albums that I've heard hundreds of times.
Yeah.
But that hasn't happened since, before streaming, obviously.
Yeah. There's a couple artists I still I'll still get really excited about, and I'll give them the courtesy of listening to the whole album, I'm lucky enough to listen to the whole album, but yeah, it's definitely in the minority nowadays. Well, Frederick,
wait, you know what? My kids, who are now 11 and 14, they have one artist where they listen to music like we did. Billie Eilish, man. They listen to Billie Eilish the same way as I listened to Stone Roses when I was a kid. They've heard the entire catalog 100 times, and they still go on and on.
She's good.
Cool.
Yeah, she's good. I she's good too because of the range of people who like her. You know what I mean? Your kids like her. People our age like her. And pop radio likes her.
She is good. She is amazing. Yeah.
Frederick.
Yeah. All right. So sorry.
Oh no, dude! It was a pleasure talking to you. I'm glad we got to talk so long. But one more question. We'd like to end the interview by saying, if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring artists, what would it be?
Well, it's one of those classic things that you've heard a million times before, probably, but it's true. It's be nice to everyone on the way up, because you're gonna meet everyone on the way back down.
That's great advice. Don't burn those bridges. And allies are a lot better to have than enemies. So
but really, I think that's if you can find it in yourself to be a nice person, you'll enjoy every step of the way so much more. And it's not more fun on top of that ladder than it's here or there. Just going along and getting to know new people and having a nice time together, and take your time to have a good time, kind of. So yeah, it is good advice. Be nice to everyone and you'll enjoy. Like, don't be one of those super ambitious people who will step over dead bodies to get there. Just be a nice person and enjoy every step of the way, because every step is equally fun. I've never had like a major insane success, but I'll tell you, the first time you play for 200 people is just as much fun as the first time you play for 20,000 people. It is. It really is. And the first time you get a great review in your local paper, it's as much fun as when you get a good review in an international paper. It really is. So enjoy every step on the way and be a nice person.